Sorted. So that was a wee that was a wee kind of lesson for me, amongst other stuff. But I think that now, like, you know, me and you were just chatting there before hitting the record button, Ross, about super rares and the likes. Like, I'm looking at your gallery now, and you're up to 12, and we're kind of chatting about different maneuvers and all this kind of stuff as well. But I think, like, me and you have spoke about super rares quite a few times privately and like on videos and whatnot. And the thing with like super rares is very much like we were just kind of saying this there before hitting record, but when you start off and you're brand new and you've got no cards, like buying a rare is like a big deal, you know, and it's like a very careful maneuver. It's, you know, you're thinking about the perfect price you can get. When can I actually play them? Can I hold off a bit longer? Should I have bought them yesterday? And as you kind of move up the tiers, you go through that same experience kind of time and time again. And when you're in the market, like all the mistakes you've made with rares, you will make with super rares. And again, just before hitting the record button, last time I'll reference it, but we're kind of talking about uniques and everything as well. So looking at your super rares now, Ross, there is definitely a bit of a theme going on. There's a lot of U23 badges stuck across them. But other than that, is there anything when you've been buying these super rares that you could draw parallels to from when you first started picking up rares?
Yeah, so like you said, I'll reference it as well. We were speaking a little bit before, and we were saying about the kind of uniques that you want to pick up, the level that we're at if we're looking to make the next step. I think we've fallen into the trap now of we're used to buying better kind of rares. So you're looking at like a tier 1 rare, maybe a star rare, and the super rares that we've started to buy now, because we've got an established collection, I would say are now tier 2 and above. I would say is a pretty fair assumption. They don't necessarily have to be ridiculously expensive, but I would say all the players that you or I have bought at super rare level, have been tier 2 and above. So taking those kind of parallels, I think when you look at the first sort of like cluster of super rares that I've got there, I would say they're all tier 3. The same as kind of when you come into buying the rares. And in hindsight, I mean, you should I think what you done was a little bit better, and it's why you've got a bit of a leg up, is buying like a Depay, biting the bullet, but at the time it was only 120 quid. So yeah, it's obviously not the exact same as like biting the bullet and spending $1,000 now or something on a star rare. So it's not quite the same, but it's the same sort of principle. So you want to be, I think, if you've got the funds, you want to be going for it as much as you can. So super rares that I've bought recently really sort of, they allow me to go at better divisions. They allow me to go and target cards that I want. So I'm really wanting to focus more on younger players. So that means focusing on U23. If I can get a lineup out in Division 3 and Division 4, if I've got the depth, it just gives you a lot better chance of winning cards, especially with the new reward structure. Even a tier 2 in under 23 is so much more desirable than a tier 2 in global, because you could literally get anyone from anywhere. Now, you can get great ones in global and you can get poor ones in under 23, but I like my chances better in under 23, smaller pool, and they're players who generally I would go up and buy anyway. So again, we were saying, I guess sort of one of the roots of the video, a lot of people have been asking for a little bit more strategy. So we were talking a little bit, it's just come back to me what we're mentioning about as well. We're talking a bit about strategy, and it was about why would you target these better super rares? It sort of ties back in with, we were saying about Champion Division 4, how competitive Champion Division 4 is. And I've been saying, shall I build a Champion Division 4 team because I like the players, or I watch more of that football? And then you think, people are scoring 400 pluses and not coming out with big scoring. We're sort of trying to get to the root of why that is and why it makes super rares so valuable to us. And I think we've both got a similar stance on it. So the super rares become valuable to us because there's less people who can use them in the tournaments. Further to that, because there's Division 3s and Division 2s, which use the super rares, some of these higher value ones, especially yourself, you've got quite a few at what I would say are sort of tier 1 and above super rares. If you're using them at D3 level, you're very seldomly going to actually be up against someone else that's using it. So if you were using, I'll use my own for example. So I would say Stings is probably a tier 1, maybe a star on his day. So no one else is going to really be using his super rare in Division 3. I don't think he would make up a really good D2 lineup, because he's a forward, obviously under 23 as well. So you're going to be seeing him in under 23s mainly. It could be that I've got a card or challenger, exactly. So it spreads over more divisions. So the actual utility you're getting out of that card when he bangs a big score is so much higher than you get out of the rare. So if you look at someone like Hans Vanaken, great scorer, consistent scorer, and I do have one, but anytime he bangs a big score when I'm in a Division 4 lineup, I know that I'm going to be up against another 100 Vanakens, and there's going to be so much more competition from other random players that score massive as well. Whereas Division 3 and Division 2, to another extent, sort of condenses that down a little bit. So it's why I think making that step is definitely worthwhile, despite the fact we've got the progress bar coming in and stuff like that. But I don't know what you think. Probably along the same line, something.
Yeah, pretty much. I think like as well, like that what you just kind of hit on there was my exact kind of fault with super rares when I went out and bought those 3 forwards quite publicly in between like January and March, you know, the Larson and the Mecca and the Nunez. It was kind of for me, it was that kind of situation was if I do, they're big ticket items, none of them were cheap at the time. In hindsight, they do look kind of cheapish even now, especially with the rewards that they've bagged me in the interim. But the main kind of thing with that was like anyone else who will get one of these other, you know, 9 of the 10 super rares are more than likely going to be using them in D2, maybe D1, or, you know, in a region or unders. And my big competition is always global, so I just know that the competition pool is so slim. With all the stuff that we've got coming up, and again, like you were saying there with your stings as well, the way Division 2 is really swung open potentially to account for accounts like me and you and many others that will be listening, no doubt, is we're D2 now. It's like for a long time, a lot of us were kind of standing away from it and like, listen, that's just not even worth much thought. The reward is so slim. It's kind of like special weekly almost, you know, why plan for that? If I ever have 5 random super rares that aren't playing, and that's what I've been kind of doing for the last month, then fuck it, off you go. And, you know, if he's hit, and there'll be something there for me. But now it's just totally different. It's totally swung open. And having those super rares in early, and like the Stengs, and even I'd put the Vaco up there as well. Zella Ryan, of course, TBC perhaps, along with some of your newer additions, they are definitely guys that if you are ready to make the step, or you do make the step, those are guys that will carry that, you know, no end. And it goes back like we kind of started the video on, I suppose, with the rares. You know, when you start getting to the top end of rares, you are starting to open the door in your mind to D3. Like, oh, if I got to be tier 3 super rare and on the cheap, then him going with, you know, rare Depay or rare this guy or that guy will, you know, be competitive at that level, 100%.
Yeah, and it brings back what you said a little bit about the false super rare. I know I've seen the video before, false super rare and stuff like that. So it then makes you think a little bit more about, well, if I'm getting a player of a certain caliber, I'm maybe going to actually outscore the false super rare here. So at D3 level, it's great to, if you can rely on these big super rares to get you big points. So I think there was a game week the other week. I ended up, it didn't work out, but I think I had over 200 points, I think, out of the super rares alone as a base. And then the rares still to play, the 3 rares, 1 goalkeeper, 2 outfielders. So on the face of it, I think it was actually about 219 points. I was thinking, I'm absolutely cruising here because I had some good games, some good fixtures. End up, unfortunately, DMPs didn't go my way, but sometimes that's how it is. And you've just got to factor that in. It sometimes doesn't work, but the structure behind it is the right thinking. And at D2 level, you can almost get a bit away with it. Like, I think of it more like a D4 structure, if you think about it that way. So if you've got your 2 quality super rares, you can maybe prop them up with a couple of tier 2s, and then you could probably get away with a rare goalkeeper as well, just because the discrepancy between the rare and the super rare goalkeeper score it's not going to be huge percentage wise, because they're scoring less generally anyway. So if you were to pick up a tier 3 super rare goalkeeper, he's probably not going to score as much as a top end rare goalkeeper, because someone like Oblak is going to score you a lot more clean sheets than I don't know who's a tier 3 goalkeeper.
Slovak.
There you go. Yeah, Slovak gets, when he scores well and he gets a 75, you're buzzing. But he only does it maybe once every 6-7 games. Oblak, you're going to get 20 clean sheets a season, no bother.
Yeah.
So when you look at that goalkeeper versus goalkeeper, if you're confident that you've got a good goalkeeper, or your goalkeeper is decent and he's got a really good fixture, that you can get away with that, and then your 4 super rares. If you then have 2 really good quality ones and 2 sort of tier 2 level, I think you're with the current structure in D2, it's definitely something that now me and you are opened up to, and we can have the exposure. And I think the way that I've now stacked it with having the under 23 people, and I've tried to spread it across Asia and America for now, the last few buys anyway, it just gives me more coverage. So it's another thing when you think about strategy, you need to think about coverage. And this is SO5 based only, so I think another interesting thing is SO5 versus collectability, and it's something that I was going to maybe touch on and maybe do a video on, or a blog or something. I think there's a line in the sand, but there's people who almost fit into like a Venn diagram of they're collectible and they've got great utility, and we've got a few of them, but they're few and far between, and they're expensive for a reason. You've got to supplement them with players who have got solid SO5 scores. And I think you've got to supplement your collection for fun and for personal reasons with the players that you want to collect. So you've got a Celtic contingent. They might not play in SO5, but it's good for you. And there's all if Celtic get onboarded and lots of Celtic fans come on the platform, that then becomes a little collectible clique. The same as people that they maybe collect 1 out of 100 players. I would say on the whole, they're not that significant because they might not be first season or it might not be a collectible player. But you never know. Someone might come on and it might be their team and they want the 1 out of 100 of everybody, and you therefore have a piece of scarcity that they want, and that is essentially what drives value. So I think it's almost like having a portfolio of stocks and you want to have them all balanced. But I think with the recent buys, going back to the super rares, I think it's maybe been a little bit more unbalanced, but in a good way, to give my collection more coverage SO5 wise, which I think it needed. Because I think there's little pieces that have been adding, nice little collectible pieces. So it was time to go back to sturdy SO5 players that can then go and churn out some bigger pieces. So I really want to go and target that under 23 region now and hopefully churn out some nice pieces over the next coming months.
I've got a little freeway fork. It's just coming into my mind from everything you just said, Ross. I don't know what way to go. But the first one I'll hit you with, right?
Write them down. Write them down. You'll forget.
Maybe I should do that. So I can edit this later on. The first one, Ross, right? Talking about D2. Now, me and you, quite admittedly to the people at home watching this, have very little competition experience of D2. It's been kind of flirting and just kind of putting in punts and whatever, right? But we understand the principles of SO5 pretty well. We've both been on the platform circa a year, give or take. And, you know, it's just up a level, basically, from where we're at. So there's some constants that we can kind of draw on, right? The thing I was wanting to say, right, now, with what we were saying earlier on in terms of like the tier 1 and the star super rare not occupying those D3 competitions, the goalkeeper super rares, surely if we're going to accept it, the better ones, the more expensive ones, good goalkeepers be in them, we will come across them in D2, especially now, you know. So rocking in there with a rare, like a rare All Black, for example, will probably be better in some instances than rocking in with a Slavic who shoots 20 points, because if there's only 5 other All Blacks in that division and they're all the super rare and you've just put your rare in because it's the best one you've got, for example, then there's only 6 people that are benefiting from that, you know, SO5 score of 75 or whatever it might be. Whereas you could rock out with the D3 super rare, the T3 super rare, I beg your pardon, who brings home 25 points plus multiplier equals like 33 or whatever it is. So are you going into D2 deliberately planning to use a rare goalkeeper, like regardless, or are you even going to contemplate a super rare goalkeeper?
I think that's an interesting question, because I think what the super rare goalkeeper allows you to do is also have coverage in D3 as well, because there might be a game week where you're a little bit short, but you can maybe get out of D3 if you squeeze in the goalkeeper, for example. So I've put myself in I'm always forward planning with goalkeepers. I'm not one to really, I occasionally do it, but I'm not one to really just go and buy a keeper who's like in the team and in form at the moment. I'll usually forward plan with the goalkeeper. So I'm looking ahead. I picked up a guy in the Eredivisie who's moved to 20, so he's going to be number 1 goalkeeper for like a solid mid-table team. So it gives me a bit more coverage in my challenger, and then it then makes me think, all right, well, that's me freed up a space to my under 23s, because all my challenger keepers I've got all the 23 guys. So got Safanov, got Maximenko, and got Bodart. So it offers one of them up for under 23s. It then makes me think, right, okay, so one of them can be freed up for Division 3. So it takes that option away. And then if I was to go and get someone else, obviously, if I'm going to target under 23 Division 2, it just really narrows down the amount of cards that you can actually get, because the amount of actually playable under 23 goalkeepers are quite low anyway. Then to get a super rare one that someone's actually willing to sell in season, it sort of goes against my forward planning. Yeah. So it'd be one of the things I'd have to plan ahead. And the other thing you don't really get with goalkeepers is, like, once they're actually in the team, you're very unlikely to get one who's in the team at 19, for example. It's going to be 21, 22. So by the time the next season rolls around, you're going to maybe only get 1 year out of them. So it's something that I've been very cautious to do. And I think it's why we both love Tani, because he's a bit of a god and he scores great for a not very good team, and they tend to do well. Like, they're sort of fixture proof. Like, they very rarely concede 3, despite the fact they're not very good. So he's just an ideal goalkeeper to have in there, and he seems to save penalties and do all sorts. He's just an absolute hero. But in terms of, like you said, I think it depends what division. It depends what division, because like you say, if it's All-Star, you're going to be up against those, if it's D2 anyway, you're going to be up against those 7, 8 All Blacks. because they're not going to be in Division 3 because someone is going to be, they're going to be prioritising outfield players over goalkeepers in Division 3. So you're going to see all the All Blacks, you're going to see all the Allisons, you're going to see all the Courtois, but they'll be in Champion as well. And I'd imagine Champion D2 is pretty lucrative, but I think you'll see a lot of these in the All-Star, and you'll see a much bigger plethora. But so what I would say, I don't think you can go in with a low-tier goalkeeper. Like, I don't think you could chance it unless you know, like, they have a really favourable home fixture or something, so you're willing to put them in to punt on them. I think you have to go in with the strategy of, right, I'm going to put my strongest goalkeeper in what is essentially going to be my strongest division, and then I'm going to have to take the hits from there. So I think you have to work back from the D2, much like we both, I don't know about you, but I think you do, but work back from the D3 because it's the highest level of entry that you're going for that week. And then obviously the extra punt for the D2, it's just a punt. So you're putting in, it's glorified training, but if it hits big, that sort of thing. So yeah, what my strategy is going to be is work back from the D2, but I'm going to make sure I've got enough goalkeeper coverage across the divisions that I aim to enter. And I'm going to try and do it by bringing in an off-season goalkeeper, whether it's rare or super rare. It just depends on circumstances. I'd love to have a super rare goalkeeper because it gives you flexibility, but I think it would have to be someone that's tier 2 or better, probably like pushing a tier 1 goalkeeper. You're looking at over a coin, probably between 1 and 2 ETH to bring one of them in. So it would be a big investment. So I'll have to think about that one. But
yeah. So see, when I brought in my 2 super rare goalkeepers, when I brought the Slovac in, and actually the Titan, as I remember it, the strategy with both of them was simply to buy them cheap, wait for them to get in team and playing, and sell them to a whale, somebody that plays D1 or D2, because I'm like, I don't really have a use for super rare goalkeeper, and they have not really came on as being desirable cards, so they've not really been able to sell. So Titan just goes into training, and he is what he is. Didn't cost too much in the grand scheme of things. And the Slovac is, you know, if you watch the videos, you'll kind of know what I've been doing with him. But I'm kind of now thinking to myself, I bought a Matt Turner yesterday, as you'll know. I think I shot you a wee picture. When I bought the Matt Turner, I'm thinking to myself, do I have a guy like that to have that bit of flexibility to maybe throw the rare in the D2, or do I maybe bounce him off for the Slovacs? But I thought without a Matt Turner type, when as soon as All Black goes off season and that kind of thing, that's an option that isn't really available to me, because otherwise it's Tanny. Tanny has to be U23, just because that's just written in the code of SoRare, you know. Yeah, it just is what it is. But so I'm kind of on the fence. I don't really know what to do. I tell you what always kind of sparks off my mind in terms of that conversation is when I did the MLS preview, and you know, a month or two ago, whenever it was, Surface to Air Missile had said to me he reckons a lot of Vela rare holders will use them for D2, and I found that I found that a surprise. You know, I was like, that's interesting, because he also operates at that level. And then I got me thinking, well, if there's guys that are buying Vela rare for D2, then they must be rocking about with super rare goalkeepers, and they can't all obviously have All Black. There is only, like, you know, say max 20 at this point in time. Allison max 10, Neuer max 10, Donnarumma max 10, Courtois max 10. So when you split them between D2s and upwards, you can still use, and again, we aren't really up in these waters, but D1 you can still use super rares, you know, and I'm pretty sure the cheap version would be a super rare goalkeeper rather than a unique goalkeeper. So you might find some of those guys kind of hop up to that level, because there is less of a head count in terms of entries, and you know, if you've got a super rare Allison, maybe you want to go boost that up. So that's always something that I'm still forming, you know, an opinion on. But it was just one of those things I'll never, you know, when you talk to people sometimes and they give you something, you know, a wee bit of insight, and you're like, oh, I never knew that, or I never really considered that. So for that reason, I'm quite.
I'd never really heard that, and I'm assuming that's where the idea for the like false super rare kind of came from, because you're thinking if he's powerful enough to then make up as a super rare, and you put the other 4 in.
Yeah,
it's then we're sort of resigned to the fact, unless you get that that super rare goalkeeper, and then you can sort of play around. So again, that's why I was saying it's maybe a good thing that I'm thinking about it, because it gives me flexibility. So it might be that I actually do only enter 4 in, and then I go and use the Jordan Larson, or you go and use one of the other like big strikers that I've got, like Higuain's got a good fixture, we'll chuck him in, or something like that. Or Brenner, exactly. So anything like that, it gives you that flexibility. But I feel like under 23 is maybe too much of a stretch, because, as you say, people might be picking up those super rare under 23 goalkeepers to then put into D1 and stuff like that. So we'll wait and see. But it's definitely something that's on my radar.
The other thing that came to my mind, let me check my notes. What did I write down? Where did it go? Oh, where's my? Have I lost my wee bookmark as well? No. Right. I didn't clip this, don't worry. The other one, right, was D3 competition, right? So hear me now, right? People like me and you focus on D3 quite strong.
Oh, by the way, just before you start, just you have to cut this bit out. But McBride's just put in the chat saying that Sporting are actually working on a 2-year loan for Nemeka or Nemecha.
Oh, yes.
So that would be pretty big, I would say.
That'll be amazing.
I mean, they're not going to bring him in for 2 years and not play him, I don't think.
Not far from it. That's a cheap way of buying him, you know, like, you know, because Sporting quite famously are quite poor in this current day and age, you know, when they lost like Patricio and Leao, when obviously selling Bruno and whatever. But no, good, cheers, man. But the other point that you hit me up with, another thing that came in my mind when we were chatting there was D3 competition, right? So this is quite a hard thing to forecast and something that I've kind of wrestled with, probably subconsciously until we're kind of talking just now, right? But I go into D3, right? And I buy kind of better end super rares for D3, and we've kind of spoke about that, right? With this new, well, twofold, right? With the academy coming in, right, there's going to be some people that might draw a line in the sand and go D4 and below only, and also some people like me and you that are a bit more on the front foot, market wise, ambition, blah blah blah, whatever, right, might go up to D2. So we're going to have this kind of vacuum happen almost in D3, and it might actually be even easier for galleries if we didn't actually do much, you know, through all this change. We just stayed in D3 and didn't fuck about with D2 too much. It might actually become easier for galleries like ours to just nail D3, you know, almost week on week. Because as you were kind of talking, I can't remember what it was, but you said something and it rang a bell from something I thought recently, and it was like, what I was thinking to myself was, I'm at a risk of actually treating D3 the way I treat global D4 and just putting, well, I'm not using him in D2 and he's a good card, so I'll put him in there, and he's not getting used in that over there, so he's a good card, I'll just put him in there. And then before you know it, you look at the game week and you're like, I was fucking stupid for putting them together. You know, he's in crap form, and you know, I'm just doing these things because maybe I paid a lot of money for the card, or he was good like 2 months ago. What do you think about that in terms of the competition for D3 going forward?
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you said, we've been sort of dabbling and thinking about D2, and I think we're sort of trying to structure a little bit more towards D2. But I have definitely seen where I've tried to spread myself across multiple D3s, and then I've also tried to spread myself not too thin in the D4s. So it then becomes that maybe it becomes that the D4 almost becomes a little bit obstructive. And I feel like you're sort of getting at that D3 could become a little bit obstructive for D2 because you're thinking there's a good entry pool here. So it might be that once the vacuum is, it might be like up to 20% of people get a card. And I know you can't win super rares anymore, but if you've got a 20% chance of winning a tier 1 card, it might not be, again, it might not come down to collectability, or it might not be anything like that. It might be just the fact that a tier 1 card, winning one of them every other week, actually improves what you've got, because you might be entering with tier 2 cards and then you're winning tier 1 cards, and you've still got the chance of going on and doing better, getting star rares. And I think star rares go down to, what was it, like 11th place now or something, like in the past game week. There was a lot of big prizes, and I've seen myself finishing around that mark a lot, like between sort of 9th and 18th. I've seen myself around there quite a lot. And it's nothing too executive. I've not had any monster scores this year, apart from, I think I had one sort of 430 plus or something, but apart from that, I've not had any big monsters, I don't think. So thinking about going forward, I think it's tempting to stay down at that D3 level, maybe just consolidate a little bit, because I feel like we've done that at D4 quite well. We consolidated, we both got on good runs, and I'd say we both got cards that either helped our collection or helped us SO5 wise, or were good to go on and sell and then start to build towards something else. So I don't know if maybe consolidation is the right thing, but I definitely feel like D2 now is very viable, where if you have a really good week, it's not just challenging. It could be challenging at the top, I think, because of all the factors that we've already said. So I think it's going to come down to how many people enter a pool in a certain week. Obviously, what options you have. Players get injuries, players get out of form, and various different other factors, which is sort of the whole point of managing your gallery. I don't think it's the kind of thing you just want to let sit. Obviously, you want to let them sit for collectible, but you have to manage who's in form and who's not, and who you're going to take a punt on and stuff. So it's definitely, there's going to be some close management, I think, from both of us going forward, and looking at who we have and who we can bring in. I think it's the way that we both think, who can supplement what we've got, as opposed to who do I want to just go out and buy. And sometimes you get that urge, and someone like I bought Botman last week just because I don't know why. I put in an offer because a guy was selling his gallery, and I got like 0.05 lower than what the last offer was, and I knew he was desperate to get rid of his cards, and quarter of a coin for a guy who's going to be under 23, eligible for 2-3 seasons, links to every big club in Europe. He's won the title with Lille. That's his title winning season card, and not that it just you try and build a narrative into why you've bought a card, but sometimes it's just because I wanted to. But I feel like we're doing. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm doing less of that. I'm sort of gearing towards a strategy a little bit more, and it's definitely one of your videos definitely helped when you talked about you need to know what your strategy is and where your edge is and how you're trying to push that edge. And I think I've focused in a little bit more on that, and I think that's what a lot of people should do if they've got the money to do so. So a lot of people just obviously put together a threshold team and they're just looking to hit that 250 points. But if you've got the time and you can put the research into buying cards that only really fit your strategy and maybe only trading for cards that fit your strategy or cards that you can sell for more than what you've bought something for to build towards a strategy, I think that's a good way to go. Getting into a bit of strategy talk, and people have been asking for it. People want to know about strategy, but again, it's hard to say this is what I do because then it sort of tells everybody what how we're thinking. But obviously we're operating at that sort of D3, D2 level, the same as the people at D1 level don't speak to us because they don't want us to know what they're thinking. And to be honest, we can't really financially compete with them anyway. But
the words right in my mouth, it's one of these things with SoRare that, when I did content before in Football Index or whatever, I was kind of the only one that would quite happily go out and do a video and say, I'm buying this guy because, or I'm going to sell this guy because my portfolio didn't influence the market or pricing in that sense. Whereas with SoRare, I feel like I really don't mind talking about it because it's like, I've already, if I buy this card, no one can stop me, like, there is only 100 of them. So if you can get one as well, then good luck to you. But or this type or this mold or whatever. But the thing so whenever we're talking about this stuff, right, the thing that I'll just think to myself, right, whenever I'm thinking about divisions and goals and strategy and that kind of thing, is I always take myself back to kind of when I started, and I thought I was buying guys like maybe Mancini and Depay and whatever, Gabriel, and I was thinking I want to win cards I could never afford to buy. That's always been the goal. I want belter cards for whatever purposes and whatever intentions I may have around each individual one, depending on what it is. My goal is to win much better cards than I could possibly afford. And see, when they changed the D2 format, we got our first glimpse at it. Seeing star super rares and tier 1 super rares just littered all the way back to like 17th position. It's fucking mouth-watering. It really is, because see, when I was saying this something recently, but like, see when the new season starts and we get next season PSG, Bayern, Juve, Real, all the new ones and all the new clubs that come with it, and all those reward pools get totally replenished with brand new cards for the new season, it is honestly going to be a feeding frenzy. It's going to be about who can compete at that level. It's going to be, have you got the cards ready to rock? Or, have you got a missing piece? Again, we were talking today about under 23s super rares that can go D2 level in the forward category. And at the moment, especially in the European off season, there is a real dearth, if that's the right word, of quality. There is only maybe about 3 or 4 real contenders that you're like, he should be in a top team, like SO5 wise. And again, when that kind of realization of the cards that can possibly be won, when all these reward pools get replenished, I think it will then shine the spotlight kind of on the current situation as we're kind of talking about it now a bit better, perhaps.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that way, in terms of it's never been about, I think me and you both grasp the concept of what this is about. It's not necessarily about making money. It's not about necessarily making this team so that you can make back the value in 1 week and go and sell it and double your money. For me and you, it's about, we love the concept and we think that there's definitely a collectible element here and we feel like we're in early. So if we get the best cards that we can as early as we can, the collectible value will come later with the platform growing and with it actually becoming a viable collectible business, which it already is. It's just it's not come to the masses yet. So getting these players, like you said, that you can't afford to go out and buy, or the auctions are far too competitive with people who are competing above us. We're at that level now. If you can go and win a star super rare or something, and if you go and win it in under 23, and then let's just say it happens to be Mbappe because everyone wants Mbappe because he's one of the best players in the world and collectible on that. It's something that we can never go out and buy, but something that nobody can then ever take away from us unless they want to pay us through the nose for it. And then at that point, it becomes it's sort of it's fulfilling that prophecy that we've come out to set. That's the way that I play it, and I think it's the way that you play it as well. And at the core of it, I think people have forgotten, they've gotten away from the fact that it's just a game. It's not an investment vehicle. It's nothing. It's not trying to dress itself up as something that's not. We've seen how that's went before. It's also not none of this card production or anything has any value. It's about what you want to collect, and if enough people get on board with it, there becomes a collector market, whether people want to deny it or not. So you could collect fucking anything. You could collect vintage iPhones. Like, people might just think, oh, they're old iPhones and they're shite and they don't work anymore. But the whole point is, if someone else wants to collect them as well, and then someone else gets into it, that creates a collector market. Like any wanting to make loads of money, and it's never been my intention. I don't think it's yours either. It's just, that's a nice little bonus to what the game is and what the concept is, and to the actual cards that we're trying to collect. So that's how
there we go. I make you totally right, you know. And again, it's one thing I'm always, it's just maybe something I do as a person quite a lot, but I'm always kind of thinking to myself, because like, when we're talking about strategy, we're talking about, like, you know, me and you are just kind of chewing the fat now about D2s and D3s and what could come and what we might be able to achieve and whatever. But I always try my best to keep myself grounded in what started off the strategy, or what started off, and it kind of references the video I think you were talking about earlier, you know, because when ETH is flat, you know, I mean, you've had those chats, you know, you go to bed at night, ETH is £460. You wake up the next day, it's £1,000, you know, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? People come into the market and Felixes are going for 5 ETH and Mbappe's are going for 20 ETH, and everything's with all that, and seeing the investment world, all that stuff's called noise, right? When all that noise comes around, it's really hard to stay stable and make like clinical decisions, you know. And I made a few mistakes and I made some good ones. I made some good decisions for all that stuff. But I'm now, I put a lot of pressure on myself personally with my own gallery, my own club and whatever, to make sure that I'm get every decision I possibly can right. Because when all that noise kind of happens, he's flying away, or this new club's onboarded or whatever, it is so easy to just turn on a coin and go against everything you've been planning for the last 2 months and go, I'm spunking all my money on that super rare that just came on auction that wasn't available 2 minutes ago. And then before you know it, you buy it, and then you look at your club and you'll have just fucking, I need to buy like 2 goalkeepers right now. Why did I just buy a super rare forward for no apparent reason, you know? And those kind of things can derail you quite easily, you know. But I think, you know, and again, like when I first joined the platform, there wasn't that many users, of course, you probably know that. But also, like, there wasn't really that many prizes. Like, in terms of ETH and money, it was only number one that got money. You know, that was the only person that got anything. And when I was building my strategy and building my club and my gallery, that was the only win I could legislate and target for, was finishing first, you know. Finishing, you know, like with 250 points and getting a wee crumb, or finishing like 45th and getting a tier 1 or whatever it might be, just was not on the agenda. It was even discussed, you know. And I think McBride brought up a good point the other day as well on Twitter. He was talking about how, like, you know, that the Euros, the under 21s wasn't even getting scored until like a month ago, and some people weren't happy with the pool that was available prize wise, you know. So it's one of those ones that when you give people, and this is just a consumer thing, this isn't a SoRare thing, but when you give people, you know, you give people an inch, they want a mile kind of situation, you know. And I think it's important people just kind of keep sober to that fact that, like, you know, really take a step back and look at the timeline of events, you know, from when you started, when things were promised, when things were said. And, you know, when you do take that kind of step back and you get the whirlwind of Twitter or Discord or whatever it is, it can be quite easy to sober up and kind of remember, okay, well, and you might change your opinion, you might, you know, that's normal and that's fine and all the rest of it. But sometimes I say when you're in that kind of hurricane of your phone and all the apps that you're in and all the chat that's going on and all the notifications, it's very easy to get taken away in any direction possible, you know. The other thing that came to my mind when you were talking earlier is timing. So you were kind of saying, when you're, if you were to look at your super rares, right? I had them on screen, and I've still got them on screen. So we've got Segura, Sakamoto, and Bello being the last 3, right? So 2 Americans, 1 Asian. Then Shalov and Stengs, 2 Challenger. Zelarayan, Che, and Vaco. So we're going rural, and then back to the guys you bought over 6 months ago. The thing with super rares, right, that again, when you're buying from auctions in particular, you don't really have much of a control over when you can get the card that you want. And sometimes You know, like for example, the Segura, maybe not the Segura, in fact, but maybe even like the Bello, for example. When the Bello comes up, if you're thinking about Bello, the time to go for him is when his auction's on. You know, because you know if you decide, oh, do you know what? I probably should have went for that Bello, but it's 2 weeks down the road, and he's had 3 super rare auctions already. Still got another 2 to go for the rest of 2021. When could they be? God knows. Or you're waiting for a price to come out. Somebody wants to sell. When could that be? Will they sell them? How much will they sell them for? So sometimes time is not a luxury we have with super rare. Sometimes it is one of these things you do need to stay kind of liquid to. You do need to keep a wee bit of money in the wallet and wait for a list of 5 guys. One of them comes up, I'm on them, or a list of 20 guys, or whatever you want to do. How have you found kind of juggling that kind of side of things?
I think it's like anything. I think you need to keep a close monitor on the players who you find fit your strategy. So Bello was a bit of a chance one. So I think we spoke about it before. He would come in. There was a series of glitched auctions, maybe a week or two ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and he fell into it. So he ended up going for a lot cheaper than I think even he was cheaper than his first rare of the season, which is a bit fishy. And I seen that the guy had listed him a few times. So this is what I know you and I both do, but I feel like it's an underutilized tool still, is building your favourites. So if you've got your favourites built, and by the way, this includes taking players off your favourites. So if you've got players in the
Yes.
favourites who you favourited from months ago, and they no longer fit your strategy or whatever, then it's worth taking them off because they'll just clutter there'll be more of them cluttering them, and you're not interested in that kind of player. So I've went through and I take quite a bit of time each month and favourite players who I'm looking at and unfavourite ones who I'm not. And it happened that I always go newly listed first. So he come up, and the guy had tried to sell him a few times because he's obviously got him on the cheap and he's thinking I'll flip him for a quick buck. So I've managed to get him for a price that I probably would have paid more for in the auction anyway. And that's just one specific example. The other guy, Sakamoto, who, I mean, you can get his rare for 0.26 at the start of the season, let alone his super rare. But again, we're now 20 games into the season. So that's exactly what we're talking about timing. In that 20 games, he's hit form, he's got injured, and he's not really come back to form. So we've got a longer sample size, but we've also missed a piece of his form for the season. So he's a kind of player who I think you'd agree, he's not like a big 100 every week. He's not a huge hitter, but when he's in a nice little run of form, you're getting 60s and 70s. So he's the kind of guy who I think he'll have another one of those runs before the end of the season, and that's where I want to hit the utility. So when we're talking about timing, it was the right sort of timing for where I think the cycle of the player is. And it's also the right timing because I seen the guy again had listed him multiple times, lower and lower each time. I messaged him. He obviously wanted ETH. So it's one of those things. I kept watching it because the demand for that kind of card won't be high whilst he's not in form. And it's the kind of guy who I want to catch most of his form. And he might be the guy that I then go and sell on again, and I'd maybe take the same money back, but I've got that bit of utility out of him. So if he's made some cards for me, and he's, like we said, if he ends up in a D2, especially an under 23 D2, if he's in a successful lineup in that and he's ended up bagging me a tier 1 super rare or something, he's not a tier 1 super rare. So he's bagged me something better that I can then go and sell him, and it's added to my collection, not only collectability wise, because a tier 1 super rare is going to more than likely be more collectible than someone like Sakamoto, but he's also added to the SO5 value. So he's one of those little sort of, he fits a lot of boxes for a short period of time. So we're talking about timing in terms of auction. You can also think about timing as in the lifespan of a card for you. So I think it's quite important. A lot of people sort of forget about it. If you're buying 33-year-old goalkeepers, that's fine. It's nothing against it, because if they're playing every game, then they've got as much utility as a 25-year-old. It's just, I think, in terms of how much utility they give you in your career, it then makes it an infinitely shorter time that you've actually got that card.
Agree. I think I'm bidding on Wanyama tonight. 1 of 100 or 1 of 10. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Goes, I think, just after midnight, and he kind of like, I was kind of talking to myself. I do this a lot, as you driving the van earlier on the day, going from A to B and whatever. And I think to myself, right, Wanyama's the only super rare auction that I said before MLS came out 100% I will go for, and I've kind of, I've ended up getting Joseph, I've ended up getting 2 defenders, and then I got the Matt Turner the other day. So I'm thinking, I really need them. I really need them. And then the kind of chat I had with myself was actually very similar to what you were saying about Sakamoto. Like, I kind of know, maybe not SO5 experience wise, but I know Wanyama is a top end for the MLS. This is, of course, CM. The other thing as well, and I'll probably expand on this for another video for people who maybe not got this far through this one, but what will escape probably the novice MLS observer is the CCL, the CONCACAF Champions League, right? MLS gets 4 entrants to that every year. Whoever wins the Eastern, whoever wins the Western, whoever wins the MLS Cup, and the best Canadian team, they're the 4 teams that get the spots. So out of this year, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, you know, I don't think it's a wild bet to say that I fancy Montreal to outperform the other 2. Toronto started pretty naff, and Vancouver are always quite flaky. So I'm kind of thinking a wee bit, trying to think a little bit further afield with it, because his form isn't great, and I'm never expecting his form to be great. This train of thought is what also kind of led me to the fact, or the thought I shared earlier, where I was thinking, am I maybe at the risk of underestimating D3 all of a sudden? Because what I was then thinking is I could just put this Wanyama in D3 every week, and then I know I've got a decent wee super rare CM. I'm looking at scores now. Majorities are mid 40s, and then you get a bunch of high 50s, low 60s, you know, if he does okay. And I was thinking, I could just throw him in D3 every week and not even think about it as long as he's fit. So I'm kind of humming and hawing on it. I think I will go for him still, because I think that kind of D3 kind of placeholder element he can maybe offer me is something that I will probably come to enjoy. And it might not even be he wins me anything in D3 per se, but pardon me, he enables me guilt-free to go D2 with like a Medina or a Barco or a Key, or, you know, whoever it might be, another midfielder. But then try to judge a price for somebody like Wanyama, I'm finding a bit difficult now, because ETH has been nice and stable for a little bit, which is good. But he is a bit older, and MLS super rares, like me and you've bought a few, we were just chatting about, you know, and the prices of them ETH-wise has actually been quite good, you know, in my opinion. So it's one of those ones, the market, a lot of people are buying super rares. There's a lot of super rares to be bought, and because ETH has been quite stable, I think we're getting to a stage where there's maybe a rhythm and, you know, a kind of consistency of price in that market kind of coming back until ETH does something mental again, and then everything will readjust, of course. So yeah, so I'm on a similar train of thought in that sense to yourself with your Sakamoto and that kind of thing as well. Because even Wanyama, like if Montreal were to finish like 5th in the conference, he'll probably be a big part of the matches, and they winning tackles and playing balls. And I've seen Montreal a few times. He's had a few headers, and we all know what Wanyama can do from a corner if he gets on the end of it. So I'm kind of hopeful I'm buying him knowing a little bit more, kind of like you are with Sakamoto, because you know Sakamoto's hit form before, and anyone who glances at that card in auction will just see the last 5, and they even go to the last 15, they'll be like, nah, this guy's not made of it. And sometimes those are the super rares that might enable you, or enable us in this case, you know. So yeah, similar.
There's definitely something to be said for knowing the player rather than just sort of looking at the form. And it's the same as, you're not going to sit and watch every single player, every match that they play, extended highlights or whatever. You're maybe only going to do it for like literally just a handful of your players. You're kind of going off the stats, and you're going off what they offer you in terms of, are they under 23, are they not, that sort of thing. But with actually knowing the player, you'll get a sort of feel for when they're fit and when they fit into the team and what sort of role that they're playing. So same as looking at Sakamoto, yeah, I know that he's not an elite player, and I know he's not going to go on play for a top European team or anything like that. There's boundaries to why I've bought him. But at the moment, because of some of the boxes that he does tick, he then gives you that, like you said, he's basically like an enabler to go and let you either do something else with your team, go to D2 level, or he can easily fit into an under 23 team or a Asian lineup, or if he's got a good fixture, maybe he can fit into the D2. So it's all about sort of having that kind of flexibility. So I feel like there's definitely something to be said that different players give you that flexibility. Like we said about the goalkeepers earlier, they give you flexibility in divisions, whereas I feel like the under-23s give you flexibility across sort of age range. So they're in global or under-23, or they can then, like I said, fall into Asian lineups and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely something for being said. If you're picking up these SO5 players, if you can, try and make them as flexible as possible. And I think that's an overall decent strategy, just to sort of to do that anyway with anybody that you're buying. Like I said earlier, it has to fit your strategy. So sort of that's what I've been focusing on: fit players that fit multiple divisions and can cover multiple leagues and all that kind of stuff. So that's my train of thought at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think as well, like I'm just trying to off, I had a wee pause in that there. But when we were chatting earlier, like again, like it's hard to. The main thing with a lot of these things is staying focused and staying on the course and staying the path. Obviously, you need to be able to adjust as things develop in front of you. You know, in terms of like the new reward structure, or previously when the scoring matrix changed. You know, if there is a kind of known change on the horizon ready to come, and I think probably the one we haven't really touched on is the new scarcity potentially. You know, so we were obviously getting really excited about super rares, and we're kind of looking up and thinking, let's go a step, let's go for, you know, star super rares and tier 1 super rares, that kind of thing. But when the new scarcity comes in, there will be things we cannot possibly even legislate for in our strategy at this moment, for the impact it'll have on gameplay, on the market, and just the whole thing as a spectrum, as a sphere or an entity or whatever. When I think about it, I think, and again, the most obvious thing that I think we've all kind of touched on at some point is like all the people that will just go, fuck D3, I'm going to the academy, I'm going to play safe and do this progress bar and kind of yield out from there, which will be cool. And then there'll be some people, probably like us from the sounds of things today, that will just kind of ignore it and move on. And can I do it? No, okay, yes, maybe this week, maybe not this next week. Because it sounds like it's not a permanent, you know, it's not a tattoo that goes on your club. You cannot do Academy League. It's like if you enter D3, it gets locked. If you don't enter D3, then it's open. So the progress bar thing, you might actually be able to dip in and out. You know, see if it's like, you know what, see this game week, my guys are running, you know, I'm going D3, fuck the Academy League, fuck the progress bar. I'm going for that podium in D3. And some weeks it might be, if we think about some of the super rares we were chatting about, like Wanyamas, and that's all you've got really. Do you know what? See, this game week, I'd rather just get a bunch of progress knocked up and get me to the next level, and I can cash that in at the end of the month, or at the end of the cycle, or whatever. So there might actually be a bit of a duality coming that we aren't really able. I've just kind of made this up as I've been talking, to be honest with you, but it is possible, potentially.
It sounds feasible. It definitely sounds like something they could do. Whether you'd get to the desired level without doing it week in, week out, we don't know. Even if you could do it like every other week, and then you maybe get up to the level where they're saying you can get extra experience, and maybe really valuable if you can put that on a super rare player. Then totally. it allows you to benefit from the progress bar, but not in a way that you're then taking away rewards from other people, or not in the way that you're then sort of abusing it, where you can it's easy enough to do whilst also doing D3 on other weeks. Maybe make it to a level where it's somewhat beneficial, but it's beneficial that you take it away. So if you can use it on a super rare, that's not going to come into D4 play anyway, so it's not going to affect anybody at D4 level. And if there's an next division when new scarcity comes in, it won't affect them either. So I'd be interested to see how they balance it, if they could even do that. But it's definitely something that I'll be looking out for.
Yeah, because even as we're just both kind of talking there, because like for example, midweeks could be a great, like, do you know what, I'm just going to go Academy League, and you know, midweek I've only got one goalkeeper playing, so also I'm not entering D3, it's kind of open to me. And it might be, like you say, maybe because I've done progress bars in multiple computer games, as I'm sure you have, Ross, and everyone listening. And you will like get to level 1 probably with one kind of churn at it potentially, but there's not going to be very much. You know, might just be some credit for the club shop that's on SoRare, might be something like that. But it's something that, you know, it's maybe one of these ones, and we've done this kind of thing before with uncertain upcoming events, is try and maybe cover both bases. You know, like I'm covering the base of, do you know what, I might just want to vacuum down a D4 in the academy. I maybe don't need the super rares anymore. Maybe don't need the Vela type, you know, the false super rare or whatever it might be. But you do have them, and it's like, oh, you know, they will become, they are, you know, cards like that do have a place in the market, and they always, to an extent, you know, in air quotes, they will always have a buyer in a sense. So some of those cards, they do afford you patience, and sometimes it might be a bit more sensible potentially to play both angles, and then you've got the option to exercise the one that benefits you the most. because when I was picking up some of these super rares early doors, I think I'd said to you anyway, I think I'd maybe said it in videos, but my strategy with the super rares was I want to buy D2 level, we've kind of referenced this already, I suppose, but I'm kidding on it myself, I want to build a D2 team, but I don't. I want to build really good D3 teams, but I'm going to kid on and try and build a team as if I'm going D2, knowing I'm not going to. And again, with that kind of covering, and then, but you know, also at that point when I was saying all that, the reward structure was talked about at some points when that was relevant. You know, that was my strategy. I was kind of holding out, and when the rewards change, I'm kind of positioned to only need, you know, I say only in air quotes. You know, again, I picked up 4 super rares in the last month, and I'm kind of set now. I can go D2. I didn't need to do a massive bit of surgery and upheaval. I've kind of done all that already, kind of by accident, kind of by design. So it's one of these ones as well. Like it's a really funny thing to try and talk about, but prepare for the unknown. It's such a hard thing to do, but be prepared to be, you know, surprised, and you might want to change direction, which is a wee bit contradictory, but hey ho. You know, when they kind of announced the academy stuff, what was your kind of gut feel on all that kind of stuff in terms of your decision making?
I mean, it doesn't really affect me, to be honest. It's not going to be something that I think about too closely, because I'm going to be entering D3s with the way that I've planned my collection. I've bought enough super rares where I'm going to be entering D3s, so it's going to take me out of that progression bar. But I think anything that helps people, like I said, progress. So anything that allows you to do that can only be beneficial for the platform. And I guess it sort of does put an objectivity on it. So progression to me is somewhat subjective. So if you've bought a card that you think improves your collection, that's up to you. If you win one that's like other people have bought for a lot more, but it doesn't mean anything to you, you've not necessarily felt like you've progressed at all, albeit you can go and sell them and buy something that you do feel like you've progressed in, and it will create that sort of market where if more people can sort of get on the board, they can start to customize, and there'll always be that sort of liquid market to an extent. But again, it's a subjective thing that they've sort of made objective, which I'm not sure I like that much. But again, it's not going to actually affect me personally. So I'm trying to sort of separate those feelings away from seeing the benefits of it for others, if you know what I mean.
I'm with you, man. Again, there's still also a lot of details around it we don't have yet. You know, they'll come in due time. But it was just again something that occurred to me as we were kind of chatting.